Welcome back to Scions of the Southland for Sunday, October 13th. This is your weekly recap of Georgia Tech numbers and words. My name is Akshay Easwaran. Joining me today on another beautiful day in Atlanta, Georgia, are Jack Purdy and Jake Grant. Gentlemen, how are you feeling today?
Tired. Also, my brain is spaghetti because Duolingo runs my life. And I
Have
did
you sold your soul to the owl?
the 2 free weeks of super, which means I can make lots of mistakes, but it also means I can like just go at it. And because I knew this weekend would be relatively free, I did that today. I also ran and biked and went to church. So for a day that did not take me more than like X miles from my house, I'm pooped in my brain spaghetti, but like here we are.
Well, I mean, I started 400 miles from my house today, considering I drove back from Durham, North Carolina, or Durham slash Chapel Hill area, uh, and then watched a lot of football. Man, let me tell y'all, Chapel Hill is the best. I mean, just as a pure college football town, it's a fun time. Would absolutely recommend it, regardless if it's our team playing or your team if you have a different school. Just it's a great place to be. I've only really done Auburn as like a proper college town, so it felt good to see a different flavor, and it was fantastic.
Jack, so I don't know if you read this because it was before you came on staff, but when COVID hit, I power ranked all the college towns I had been to for games and meets and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have since been to Blacksburg, which would certainly make a nice entry on that list. I've been to Louisville now too, but I had Clemson and Chapel Hill as my one and two. To be completely honest, I
Yeah.
think Chapel Hill's a great town, and I'm glad you had a good time. Good food too.
Yes.
Um,
No.
yeah.
Our old writer Jake Patterson, who now goes to North Carolina, he showed me around between he works for the team, so like we were able to get on the field after the game and
Poor
stuff like
kid.
that. And he brought me
So
around.
much Jeff.
Yes, we talk a lot, but he brought me around to some great spots after the game, the good drinking spots, good fishing holes and things like that, or watering holes and things like that. So, um, and like
Did
the
you
neighbor.
did you bring a fishing pole?
No, I did not bring
What's
a
the
fishing
bait
pole.
and tackle situation like?
I don't think they have any lakes or rivers nearby. I think the closest watering source is their swimming pool if they have one. Uh, but
I mean, I would
nonetheless,
recommend not fishing in a university swimming pool. That might
They
be
have they
hazardous.
have a really weird swimming pool, but we don't have time to get into this right now. Anyways,
You know
sorry.
what we do? You know
Just
what
let
we
it
do
be
have
known that it
time.
is weird, and I'll leave you with that.
all
You
right,
know what we
well,
do
there you
have
go.
time to get into today. A 41-34 victory for Georgia Tech in Chapel Hill over Mac Brown's merry band of poor defenders. Jack, walk me through. You were there
I
and you
was
were in the
there.
press box. So
Hmm.
walk me through the environs, the sounds, the sights of this game.
Uh, well, so here's what's not fun about the press box at Keenan Stadium is that it's windowed in. So I basically heard nothing
Ooh.
outside of the guy inside the PA box telling us what was going on and the occasional Tom Brenneman uh sound cue because the door was open to the TV box. Nonetheless, I got the scorebook here in front of me. There were 13 scoring drives, which was more than I remembered, but that makes sense considering we won 41-34. Um, I think all in all, to start, had for a touchdown, he had the first score of the game to make it 7-0. Jacoby Criswell did his thing. He was able to scramble a lot against us. Burr again only hitting short field goals because he missed his 49 yarder, but he hit a 26 and a 29. And by the time he hit his 29 yarder, we were up 20-14 at the half. That I think just kind of gloss over that first half. Like we looked pretty fine. Haynes had his customary 20 plus yard touchdown run. Um, UNC was gained a bunch of chunk yardage at the end of at the end of the first half, which let them get a double possession opportunity but they left a minute and 20 left on the clock for us. We were able to get down into field goal range, and Burr was able to hit one to make it 20-14, which ended up being very critical at the fact that we had made that field goal and also that we had blocked a or a block tipped slash it was North Carolina's first half field goal attempt was hooked, but also Rodney Shelley got a hand on it. So technically it was our like a third or fourth blocked field goal of the year, which we do that now apparently. Uh, Second half, again, Kings got another touchdown, so we were up 27-14 early in the second half, which should have been enough. It should have been enough. They hit a big time 50-yard field goal, which was a big plus for them. The real kicker was that we allowed a punt return touch, a 69-yard punt return touchdown by Elijah Huzzy late in the third quarter. Our return coverage was just not good all game, kickoff or punt. They did really well in that. Shanahan's punts were getting towards the sidelines, but they were not getting far enough downfield for the most part. So we did not really win the field position battle, I think, in any way that mattered, which was also a problem last week against Duke. So that isn't fully solved, and North Carolina was able to take better advantage of that than the Blue Devils. Fourth quarter, Jamal Haynes gets a touchdown run to make it a 10-point game again. The North Carolina has I think we have to punt or something, and then Jacoby Criswell just burns us multiple times on quarterback scrambles late in the fourth quarter, just 10-yard game, 20 or 15-yard game, 10-yard game. And Marion Hampton also had a big old run in the middle of all this as well to set up a field goal. But what was critical here is that in the last two North Carolina scoring drives, that they had goal-to-go situations, and we made them run 7 plays. They scored on third down on one, and then they had to kick a field goal with under a minute to go that would have put them up like 37-34 or 38-34 if they had gotten across, but they didn't get across on a 3rd and 9 dropped pass. And so that was huge because that allowed Jamal Haynes on the second play from scrimmage with 16 seconds left in the game to run 68 yards. And y'all got to go back and hear Andy Demetrius' call because it was Christian Leary-esque with him just breaking the voice crack happening. I was losing my mind in the press box as much as you were allowed to in a press box while I sat next to the Pop-Tarts Bowl people, and we won 41-34. 3 straight wins over North Carolina.
Four.
It was
Four straight wins.
Oh, Jesus, 4. Okay.
You got to credit one to the Minister of Mayhem himself.
Oh, my goodness.
The guy that was on the other sideline today.
And we got to say, he finally helped Georgia Tech win a football game. I mean, it actually happened.
It's his 10th Georgia Tech win.
I've got to credit my boss at Georgia Tech and North Carolina grad Rick Clark with giving me my quote or my tweet, Jeff around and find out. And North Carolina sure did Jeff around and find out in this game.
I have to say on the defensive side, or at least about the Minister of Mayhem himself, if you're a North Carolina fan and you came into the season being like, man, he was a really good defensive coordinator at Florida, very good defensive coordinator at Mississippi State, and things just didn't work out in Atlanta, I'm sure it'll be fine to put him back in a defensive coordinator spot.
I'll give you this stat. We ran for 361 yards in that very legendary game last year where we beat them 46-42, stormed the field and everything. This time, now keep in mind, it took the 68-yard run by Jamal Haynes, who, by the way, has now got his career high 174 rushing yards. We ran for 378. So Jeff Collins is 17 rushing yards worse, apparently, in a game like this against us.
To color in these lines while I dig around on Game on Paper, the much vaunted and very ballyhooed UNC defense is number 80 in Game on Paper's adjusted defensive EPA per play. That is not what you want to see if you are a UNC fan, which I think all in all this season has been a resounding disappointment thus far with Jeff Collins coaching defenses for them. But I will say, if we're switching over to talk about the advanced stats and color some of these lines in a little bit, UNC, the problem with UNC, I mean, yes, their defense was very bad.
Our run game had whatever they wanted. They had whatever they wanted.
Yeah, I will say, I think in both phases of the game, and obviously they put up 34 points, so this is going to sound like a little bit of a misdirect, but in both phases of the game, they kind of struggled. UNC, if you look at the box score on Game on Paper, they lived and died on explosive plays, and also they get that punt return touchdown too, right? So you're looking at, if you just look at the total EPA numbers, they are minus 1.4 in total EPA overall from scrimmage. But if you remove the explosive plays, they are right around minus 26. So it's a massive difference when they're able to break these situationally valuable runs. Like I think what you're talking about when you talk about those Criswell scrambles, it's like 10 yards, 15 yards. Or like a couple of those come on late downs. They're like
Yep, yep.
third and six, fourth and there was like a 4th and 9 that UNC converted late in the game that I think Jake at the bar that we were watching this game at, the guy that was sitting in front of us was just like melted back into his chair in defeat. Like
I did
it,
too. I
it's
did too.
some of that is backbreaking. To flip over to Tech's or talk a little bit more about Tech's defense rather than UNC's offense. Um, Tech did get a bunch of stops on late drives though. Like I think Criswell had some um the old solid verbal bit is like he had a little bit of Baker Mayfield in him, but
Yeah,
and
sure.
he was able to scramble and keep plays alive. But I think in general, like again, UNC had to get these very like roll the dice, explosive plays to stay in this game. And yes, you can design for those, but I think from at least
Well,
how much of this game that I was able to watch, it was like these were a lot of coverage busts, right? From Tech where
Yeah.
a receiver slips or a
but
defender
then again,
slips.
like yes, you can have a slip in there too, but you're also up against arguably the best skill position player in the
Oh,
conference in
Marion Hampton.
Amari
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Hampton. I mean,
Yeah.
if not A, then the like that is the list, you
If he
know.
doesn't, and if he doesn't
And
have his big, he keep in mind they had a holding call pull back like a 60+ yard run, so he could have had two runs for a combined like 120 yards or something like that. That didn't end up happening. If both had
yeah,
counted with the rest of his stuff, he would have been at 200 yards rushing.
I was gonna say I think that's the thing here too, and I keep I keep trying to like square this circle in my head, which is a phrase I've used way too much in the last 3 days. I don't know why. But it's almost like it was a not not Ruffian, but on those last couple drives, it was like they were playing almost not to lose on defense. I don't know if that's a
I think
fair
that's
way to put it.
fair.
Jack, you
Yeah,
were there. I mean, obviously you
yeah.
see more and you weren't subjected to the ump cam and the Lucas Oil blimp and
Well,
the
I'll tell
many
you
other
this.
cameras, and
I'll
you
tell
also
you
could
this.
hear what was going on.
It
So
was so
yeah,
bad still in the press box. The CW feed was a solid like 4 minutes behind in the press
oh good,
box. So
good, good, good.
we never could look at that as like a way to watch replays or anything like that. I
I
will say
love
uh,
I love that the ghost of Raycom past still haunts us to
so
this
many
day.
ghosts still there. I
It,
think it's on those Criswell scrambles, all those plays, like they were just sending like three guys just straight down the
yep,
field, and it pushed our secondary far enough back. And I feel like it pushed our DBs far enough back because we were pretty much just rushing four. That like he had like obviously he had the
they're
acres of
playing three
space,
on the
but
line too, weren't they? As I
yeah,
recall, for a
yeah, we
lot of
were
those.
playing many
Yeah,
on the line. So like
not a
I feel
lot
like
of push on that.
I feel like we should have done maybe something different there, but nonetheless, like it's that happens in every single like late game
Yep,
situation like that. Like you cannot let the deep ball beat you, so you're gonna let up
yep.
that kind of play, which is situationally the right move. We were not an NFL defense that could do everything all the time.
And to your point on the even like you mentioned the goal stands and things like that, it was in a way, making them eat clock. They didn't like, yeah, they're getting
Yeah, yeah.
chunky plays, but it wasn't oh, we've torched you. I mean, obviously, probably the tenor and timbre changing pieces, the punt return obviously there, but
Yeah.
once you're past that, it's a lot of that 10, 12, 15
Yeah,
type.
that was my only question I had for the main thing I had to bring up I brought to Brent in the press conference, just like it's y'all like it seemed like the red zone defense is the thing that's working the most of anything defensively outside the run defense. Like that's we did this against Duke, we did against Georgia State. Like if anyone is very, very close to the red zone, we shore up and we do really well in that zone. And yeah, I mean that he just basically was like, yeah, this worked out was kind of his answer. But nonetheless, still, that was like 8 plays we bled that they score any sooner. We're talking a very different style of last couple minutes of the game as well that we have to work with.
And to UNC, I mean, not really their credit. They did not handle that I guess their last drive well either. It didn't feel like for a team that needed to score on that drive, they were really running with a level of urgency. I get like it turns into a multi-level meta situation where you're trying to score and then also bleed as much of the clock as possible to prevent Tech from having an opportunity. to drive down the field themselves. And I think to an extent there's some logic there, but it was not a game management masterclass
No, and I mean
from either of these head coaches.
they were trying to bleed more clock too, because like on first and second and on first and goal and second and goal. Well, also second and goal should have been a backwards pass that wasn't called a backwards pass. Don't know why. But nonetheless, Sylvan Yanjuan made he got in there like he again with just rushing forward, he gets his hands up and he has very big pass breakups there. Which I mean, there's your our pass defense coming from our line of scrimmage, making serious impacts there. So like finally, when we get to that tiny area where it's super congested, we're really hard to beat. But if you can spread us out and expose our linebackers, especially, that's where there's always going to be. That's where there's been holes this whole year. Like that's how Louisville burned us. That's how Syracuse burned us. Nate McCollum should have burned us, but he got stripped on a big old pass that set up another field goal for us. Or was it the missed field goal?
That was the missed field goal.
That was the missed field goal. Okay, so either way, still, Haynes King was our leading rusher until the Jamal Haynes run. Haynes King ran for 107 yards, which was his season high. He averaged 9.7 per rush, which is quite nice. We don't know still as of recording what the injury is to him. We were thinking shoulder just based on what happened on the field, but obviously just we have no clue at all. He did not speak to the media after the game because he was actively getting treatment like immediately after the game. And Brent didn't have an update, so we'll see. They're kind of hesitant to say like what injuries are with the team. Like Jamal was hurt for the first four or 5 games of the year. They didn't say what it was. They just said it's something that it cannot hurt any further. And that was it. And that's why he kept playing. So,
I imagine the conference office is going to have some words for this. Not to the staff.
There's no
like,
rules that they're breaking. Like
no, I mean there's not.
No. That's what I'm saying.
That,
like I imagine that there is going to because the SEC mandated injury report policy this year. So I imagine that other conference. I mean, the Big Ten I think also adopted it, but I imagine that the other conferences they're going to start mandating this because this is. I understand, but it is also a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't have any issue with it as a fan. Like there, and granted, we live in a weird world in which that NIL is a thing and gambling's a thing and things like that. But they're student athletes, right? Like they're kids. Like like people need to like take a chill pill on.
These are not 25-year-olds with like real jobs. These are they're getting close to having real jobs here in this case, but these are still like 19-year-olds in some cases. Like it's not the end of the world to not know the little bits and pieces, but. All that to say, we understand why in the case of Haynes King specifically, it's like, okay, what's the deal here going into especially next week, which we can talk about that later.
We'll get.
I think that's more of a sanity thing as much as anything.
Sure, yeah,
right?
I think that's fair. All right, what else on the advanced stuff? That was kind of my basics on just the in general stuff. The vibe of the stadium was cool. They had a crowd of 44,000, which felt light in the moment, which makes sense. They lost 3 in a row. Vibes aren't great there right now, which it sucks for them, but.
A couple other notes on that end. I think we've talked a little bit about Amari Hampton. I think he's just very good. Like it's like a very extraordinarily poor rush defense, defensive performance against the run in this game for Tech after 6 games of playing very well against
total.
the run.
Yeah, 220, 201 net, 201 net. Yeah, which is yeah. You have a big star that says Omarion Hampton next to that. Otherwise, it's like, yeah, it's fine. Everyone else was held to not as much. So
this feels like a game, and I was thinking this coming in, but didn't want to put it out into words because it felt like jinxy. But it felt like a game where a Marion Hampton could have a Kyle McCord-esque effect. One guy, great game, could just completely blow out another, otherwise reasonable plan, if you will. And I mean, shoot, I think 2022 Georgia Tech team probably loses a game that plays out a lot like this. But then again, they did beat Josh Downs. But flip side, I don't know that
Josh Downs beat North Carolina.
Hampton. Yeah, that is fair. But you know what I mean by that. Like a pointsy, kind of messy. I think he's more pronounced than any player they had last year. I mean, yeah, Drake May was good, but in terms of like, the guys running the routes and whatnot. I don't know. It felt like a game that I think a lot of us had circled on the calendar for a lot of reasons, a lot of raw talent, a lot of emotional baggage
Mhm.
is, I think, a fair way to put that. And shoot, I mean, it played out like a bit of a mess that worked out. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah. And
Kind
it
kind of
almost
does, yeah.
didn't, right? I think we head into those last two drives, especially after the missed field goal with North Carolina being like, okay, well, we have 7 minutes on the clock here to drive down the field, do whatever we want with the ball as long as we get it and score.
And keep in mind, this is I forgot to mention this earlier. This was the Zach Pyron part of the game. So and we had some again a stupid penalty that backed us up on a third and one situation that turned into a third and six that we didn't convert. That was the first down we needed, like with like 2+ minutes
Yeah,
in the
that would have been
game.
the game killer.
That would have forced North Carolina to start burning timeouts, but then allow them to use those timeouts on their offensive side of the ball. Um,
The person that
on,
we were
on,
watching this at the bar with was very upset at Zach Byron gaining 4 yards on a third and
I nearly had
six.
it. Like it was kind of close. Like I mean, in
Yeah,
the end, it was like I don't disagree with the play call. Like the only Pyron
Also,
play call I
you're
disagree
trying
with.
to burn clock and not throw an interception. Like,
Yeah, like
not
he's not
just
throwing.
don't disagree with the play call. I actively encourage that play
Yes,
call. Is that
exactly.
and
Yeah,
fair?
yeah,
also
yeah.
on top of that, right? This is a guy that's generally when he's gotten game time. We obviously don't know what happens in practice, but when he's gotten game time, he's always in short yarded situations, and particularly in the red zone, right? It doesn't make sense to be like, okay, well, let's spread him out, let's go four wide, and just have him uncork it, right? It
Right.
just doesn't
Yeah, yeah.
make a whole lot of sense. And yes, I remember that Pyron has started a couple of games, and I get all that, right? Like he has a little bit of experience playing actual quarterback instead of short yardage quarterback.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it is justifiable, like both of you have said, to just keep running the ball and see if you can convert. Now, what I will say is it's a 4th and 2 at let's see, the plus 32. And Aiden Burr ends up missing the field goal. It's a very easy thing to say that you should have gone for it when Aiden Burr misses the field goal.
He should
But
hit the field goal. He should hit the field
I
goal. Yeah.
so number one, I mean, it was from 49. College kicker's probably like worse than a coin flip from 49. I'd have to check the tape, but so that's that. But this one is interesting to me just from that perspective that you mentioned, Jack, right? You get that first down, you start forcing UNC to burn timeouts, you eat up more of the clock, you
Hmm.
make you shorten this game a lot.
Yeah. That was
And
yeah. It ended up being a 3-play drive that only lasted a minute 42. That get that first down. We're talking 6 plays. We're on the we were from 327 to 145 on that. Like it wasn't enough at all. The only play call that I disagreed with the entire game, like literally just one, was when we had whatever in goal from the one, the when we usually put Pyron in to run the 1 yard into the end zone play. And I go to the Pop Tarts Bowl guys. I'm like, I can tell you exactly what's about to happen here. And they ran that play, except we've run that play one too many times, and Pyron lost 4 yards on that.
Yep.
Um, in which case we should have tush pushed instead of the direct snap because we have tush pushed. There was multiple times we should have tush pushed this game.
speaking of Byron, by the way, and I guess King, we can roll into this too. Tech did not really have a good day through the air. And I
No,
don't think
no,
that is really Jeff Collins had Haynes King's number.
yeah,
Like it's just these passing lines are not particularly good. Both quarterbacks combined I mean, I say both quarterbacks combined, but it's 22 attempts from King and one from Byron. Like they combined for minus zero point 0.1 EPA per play. It's
and
like 11 for 22 for like a buck 37.
yeah,
No sacks, no touchdowns though. So it's
yeah.
just kind of messy. The whole
It
thing is kind of messy through the air.
it's I guess no, Jake, you probably picked this up. It was like it also felt like I wonder how y'all felt from afar. Like it felt like we just didn't need to throw just in general to a point
No,
as well. Like everything
no,
we
I mean
did,
everything's working on the ground.
yeah. So it was similar. Like I had a similar vibe to last year's game for me. Also, do y'all know who has the longest catch of the game? Right for us, Luke Harpring.
That was
Yeah.
early in the game, wasn't it?
That was that. No, it was the play where where King tried to hand the ball off to nobody to his left,
Oh, yep, yep,
and
yep,
then he
yep,
just
yep.
and then he runs 2 yards. It's like, oh wait, Harpring's just sitting there and just dumps it at him, and he runs down the left sideline. We did ask them twice about that play in the presser, and our consensus is that was a mistake and it just worked out. They didn't really give a straight answer
We
on that,
take
but
those, Jack. We
we
take
do, we
those.
do. Hey, it was a first down. It was a first down.
Harpering, by the way, 2 catches, 36 yards, 1.31 EPA per target. So pretty good day at the office for a legacy kid. Speaking of the offense again, and I think these two facts kind of wrap it up on the offensive end. Number one, 0.42 EPA per rush. I think that is actually, I know it is a 96th percentile performance. It's very, very good. Everything was working on the ground. You just basically could not stop Tech. 67% of rushes were for four or more yards. Only four of them were for zero or fewer, right? Like, or 4%, excuse me, were for zero or fewer. Like, I cannot blame this team for being like, okay, well, we're gonna throw out whatever we had for King if he's coming in injured or then gets injured during the game, and then Pyron, we're gonna simplify things a little bit and just mash the gas on the ground if it's working. The second fact, Tech had a 19-point total EPA margin in this game that on from offensive plays from scrimmage that was dulled only by a punt return touchdown given up, a shanked punt on that on like the second to last series, and a missed field goal, all of which cost Tech 10 special teams EPA. So like a very cohesive offensive rushing performance that just fell victim to some of this variance is a strong word. I'm not going to say it's variance, but just like the weirdness of special teams and especially that back-breaking kind of punt return.
Well, and you sprinkle in a little bit of no explosive play success at all on the top of that, and
Yeah.
it makes for a grip your seat kind of game, I feel like. You know, one where it's like Tech's in control a lot of this, but like how in control is that? That's the thought that kept going
Mm.
through my mind, you
It
know?
It's
was well,
interesting to talk
if
about that too, because if you go back and look at Bill C's the SP plus for this game and the post game win expectancy, Tech had a 96.7% win post game win expectancy, a 15-point margin
Feels
by
wrong.
it
But
feels
it
wrong, right?
doesn't at the same time, you know?
It feels wrong, right? But the way that SP Plus is calculated with the four factors, obviously Tech dominates. And you can see this in EPA too. Tech dominates UNC in all of the more like sustainable categories, right? That success rate, the opportunity rate, like a bunch of those, like, hey, you do this, you win like 60 to 70% of the time kind of categories. But UNC gets the luck of the Irish is ironic, but they get the sprinkling of the luck of the Irish with the explosive plays, and that's how they stay in this game. And so, but that's like relying on your explosiveness rate game over game. If you can generate them, obviously that's great, but like trying to generate, 50 yards after the catch every time is not necessarily sustainable, right? So
yeah, I at this felt 14-point gap feels right. I mean, at least for me, like it really wasn't until just some fluky stuff happens at the end where not maybe not even fluky, like we just kind of shot ourselves in the foot a couple times with the penalties and how the defeat defense was running and couldn't stop Hampton one time, which I guess you give should give Hampton probably should do that once a game, and it did happen the one time. But I mean, for me, this racks is game 7-7 where we were able to dictate if we won or lost more than anything else. Like, I mean, Syracuse maybe is the one iffy one there because Kyle McCord really was dealing in that game. And they did beat us pretty soundly in that regard. But like, it felt like we were even when it was close. Like at least I felt we were doing enough of what we wanted to do offensively to dictate terms of where this game could go. Um, within reason. I mean, within variability, of course, and whatnot. We saw a lot of that. I mean, this felt like. I mean, I put on Twitter like this felt like the entire Georgia Tech football experience in a single game, save for the fact that now
Yeah.
we win these games apparently in some regards now, and especially and against teams that are not actually better than us too. Like I don't think North Carolina is a better football team than us right now, and they haven't shown that they are and win the games they've won and lost. Um, so
No,
I'm
I agree with you, Jack. I think Tech, for the most part, and this has been a weird thing. This is definitely a weird thing to say, but they have been a protagonist and they haven't been completely outmuscled or
no,
looked out of place in a single game this year,
no, the
right?
games are
And
going in a way that you would be they're sorry. The games are very believable at the end when you see the story of how the games played out. It's not like the what the hell was this game? Every game is like this makes some sense with how it went down and how it
you are
played out.
justifiably happy or frustrated.
Yes, yes, yes.
Or if you're a real diehard, you're just frustrated all the time, which
Well, we don't listen to those people, so
all right. Well, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about Notre Dame back in a tick.
Yes, as always, this podcast is brought to you by Section 103. Section 103 is the best place to find Georgia Tech apparel. I thoroughly believe that. We've talked about NIL shirts, and usually that is me referencing one Haynes King. And we do love our man Haynes King, but we've also got other athletes with NIL related shirts, jerseys, etc. Go check out Eric Singleton Jr., number 2, Zach Pyron. Number 5, be sure to, make sure you're not just looking for the starting quarterback, but you've also got some other options there as well for a real throwback. Currently on clearance, Dante Smith, gone, not forgotten, great Tech athlete as well. If you want to stack that, as always, code FTRS, 10% off free shipping on orders over $80 every day. I was a huge fan of yesterday's promotion, so keep an eye out on their socials and in other forms for promotions like that for 404 off or other related things. But yeah, check them out, section103.com and at section103 on Twitter as well.
Let's talk about Notre Dame. A 3:30 kick on ESPN next week. Notre Dame is number 12. This is the final game of the Mayhem at Mercedes-Benz contract.
yeah.
At least per FB schedules.
I'm good with that, honestly.
Yep.
As far as I can tell,
that.
it is the last game,
I think it is
unless
the last one,
something has gone horribly, horribly wrong. I will put this in pen, and I think I have put this in, well, this is audio pen, but I think I've put this in actual digital pen before. I do not like this series. I resent its existence. I understand that it makes Tech a potentially ungodly sum of money, which is great, but these games need to be back at Bobby Dodd.
The Affleck kickoff game, I think, has a payout. Like the Louisville and the Clemson ones.
The Chick-fil-A
sure.
ones, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. Why are you putting $500 bajillion into Bobby Dodd to not play there as many times as you absolutely possibly can? Which we have maintained this stadium for years. It exists there and it gets used for nothing else.
True.
Use it as many times as possible.
Right.
And also, the tailgate and fan experience is worlds better on campus. I don't care how shiny Mercedes-Benz is.
This series has not been profitable is one thing, like in strict fiscal terms. It has not been like emotionally profitable, other than like the weird wins versus UNC in this building.
That's fair.
It has not really been a productive series to watch Tech play in a like 75% full soccer configuration facility at times. And this is the final game versus a very good team that travels very well versus a Tech team that is, I mean, knock on wood, I don't have any wood nearby, but like that is on the rise, right? This for a contract that has been middling at best, this is poised to be a very good send-off.
They are selling the full stadium. So
They are selling the full stadium.
yes, you can buy 300 level tickets on Ticketmaster. You have to go through Ticketmaster, of course, because this is Mercedes-Benz Stadium and they don't use other ticketing services. But all right. I mean, I'm a homer for this stadium. Anytime I can go there, I like it. I like watching any of my teams play in the stadium, whether they be national teams or local teams or something else, or family related schools and things like that. So that's just my kind of 2 cents on it. I like the idea of playing a big game at a big stadium. I do also like the idea of playing Bobby Dodd. Like it feels like 1A and 1B to me, but I know I'm probably in the minority on this.
To be fair, Jake and I are also curmudgeons for this.
It's a
Like,
giant red and black dome. I do not want to play a game there again until it's a national championship or a Peach Bowl.
Okay.
Thanks.
No, I mean I get that too. I mean
Those could be big games, you know.
they
I'm
can
fine
be,
with
yes,
that.
yes, they
Yeah.
can be. They can be. As part of what I'm saying, driven by the fact that I've never been in the Mercedes-Benz press box and I will be on Saturday for the first time ever. Yes. Ice,
Carvel ice cream machine.
I am so pumped for that ice cream machine. You
If
have
it's
no
not
clue.
broken.
If it's broken, I'm suing Arthur Blank. Cut that.
I,
Anyways,
I thought all ice cream machines were always supposed to be broken. I thought that's just how they work, you
No,
know.
that's just McDonald's.
yeah, that's what it does.
To actually talk about the
Yeah.
game and the competition proper, Notre Dame opened as an 8-point favorite on Circus Sports. I personally, and this is not a stats back take per se, but I personally probably would have had this at double digits, like somewhere in like the 12 to 15 range feels right to me.
Yeah.
SP Plus has Notre Dame by 11, which, yeah, okay, we can throw 11 on there. I feel
Yeah.
pretty okay about that. I think, well, actually, I'm very confident that this line will change drastically depending on King's injury status, whether they make that public or not.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So I guess keep an eye out for that. Also, the weird thing with this game, considering that it is somehow both a home game and also a neutral site game because it's not actually Bobby Dodd. Anyway, is Tech getting 2.5 points, you think, for being in Atlanta?
Maybe Notre Dame has a lot of people in the city too. Like it's not a they don't have a small population in Atlanta, so
No.
that's part of why I didn't like them specifically being this particular game. Like I would have liked any other team on the calendar to be this game just because I don't.
Oh, I can think of a couple teams that I would not want to play at Mercedes-Benz. One team in particular, to be fair.
You play big games on campus sites. It's the same thing that certain segments of the college football media are like, bah, Alabama was playing neutral site games to open every year. This fits in that same bucket for me. And also, y'all haven't seen nothing until you go to Chicago and you deal with how many Notre Dame fans are up there. It's not even close.
Well, that's true.
There are a bunch down here. It's a huge national fan base, and that's what you deal with when one of those comes to town. But and this is where I'll circle it back around to a capital P point. I was astonished Labor Day Monday, and it was a Monday, yeah, sure. But the Clemson turnout in the Benz, that
Wasn't great.
2022 game, it was awful. Like,
Yeah, it was
frankly
not good.
speaking, like
Yeah.
Louisville didn't have terribly great turnout there either, considering. But I don't know how well they travel and things like that. But
Here,
you know,
well,
we usually take 55K in at Bobby Dodd for Clemson, and you know that's where my mind is at with
yeah, I hear you point.
with
Well,
this Notre Dame
I'm
stuff.
trying to remember what we were talking about back then. Didn't we sort of deduce that it was on a night before? I mean, like if that's a work night because you're back to work in school the next day, and the fact it was an evening game before
Mhm.
that it disincentivized a lot of people from potentially coming because it was like a kickoff at 7, which makes for a fan base that can drive to this game usually not want to drive to this game because you wouldn't be home until like 2 in the morning probably kind of situation. That was I feel like we had that discussion, but that it was weird. It was weird. That's all. Well, hey, now we don't have to have this game probably ever again, and we don't have to have this problem of logistical crap. So
True.
uh,
Never again,
Well,
hopefully.
now that-
We'll save
Fingers
it.
crossed.
We'll save it for another podcast. But I would gladly take the neutral opener each year as long as it doesn't cost us a home game. But that's
Sure.
a different
That's a good point.
podcast and a different idea to flesh out.
Well,
So,
let I'll point this out. Let's keep in mind as part of the whole full steam ahead and things like that. J-Pat's job is to bring in money, and he is finding any way possible to bring in more money.
Shaking down the Mercedes-Benz seat cushions
do
for
not-
cash.
I will just say if it comes out this fall, like I have no inside info. I'm just saying, just as a general, this could happen. This may not, but it could. That if they're like, yes, we're going to play 2 more games or whatever, J-Pat's only going to do that if that makes sense fiscally right now for the athletic department. So, this was not these games were not decided on by Bat. So this is not his thing. This is not his call. But from
or
here on
Brent,
out,
for that matter.
or Brent, yeah, sorry. So from here on out, it's going to be the current admin that decides games like this. And
I mean, considering the original name for the series
yep.
is definitely, and I don't think they use it in any branding anymore. They just
they
call it
cut
the game
that.
at Mercedes
They
brand.
cut that immediately. That name went away as soon as that man was gone. So Anyways, volleyball or I'm talking to Ken on Thursday about the series history, so that'll be fun.
Let's move on to volleyball. Let's talk about volleyball. Two very kind of nice and neat wins versus the Virginia schools this weekend. A 3-0 versus Virginia Tech on Friday, and then a 3-0 earlier today on Sunday versus UVA. In my notes here, I kind of have this as like not a ton to talk about here. They really needed to wipe the floor with both of these teams, and really for like a vibes thing. Probably also UVA, who took them to 5 in Charlottesville last year, and Tech did job done.
I would flip that. UVA's beaten Miami this year. Miami's a good quality ACC volleyball team. Virginia Tech is turbo garbage. They are quite bad. 6-9 going into the game against Tech, or maybe coming out of the game. Either way, came into it with a losing record. We're still too early in the conference slate to say, hey, you can be a good team with a losing record. They were not playing the caliber of teams that a Georgia Tech or an SMU or a Louisville or a Pitt or whomever, Miami even, would be playing. I would say kind of in the statistically breakdown type of way. I don't have anything that flies off the page except for one take. It is after your first take that you have on our shot sheet, Akshay. So I'll let you get that, but there's a topic that I have been meaning to broach on this podcast.
The only other thing on this that I have is it's not even really on this. It's just as we talk about this team keeping pace with those tier one programs, right? Your Pitts, your Louisvilles, your Stanfords that are almost assuredly going to take up hosting, if not like the three of the, let's say, like 5 bids that this conference gets for the tournament. SMU went into Pittsburgh and beat Pitt in 5 and has looked
insane.
Like a solidly tier one program
They're doing
the
their
entire
work.
season.
They're doing the work, yeah. Do you all know what loss we handed Virginia today for the season for them?
They're fifth?
This was their second loss of the year.
Only
They're
their
four-
second. Okay.
They're 14-2.
Huh.
They lost.
I thought-
I think they had an easier
Huh.
non-con slate, but yeah, they've
Oh,
lost.
for sure.
Their
For
only
sure.
losses have been ACC games so far. Like this was I listened while I was driving on home day, so I got to listen to Kurt Hoyt from start to finish today, which is always a pleasure in the rare chances I get to hear his broadcast. But like Michelle was in a pregame interview with her, she was very emphatic of like, no, they are turning a corner as a program. Like they took us to 5
Yeah.
last year. I mean, granted, we were down Mogridge and things like that. That was the Callie Engelman game, but like they overall are starting to figure out UVA volleyball in a real way.
Well, and
So to win the way we did is it makes me feel so happy considering UVA absolutely could have walked in and just pummeled us if they wanted to.
it's especially with the team kind of, at least after last week, looking like they've been on their heels to come out and have
Exactly.
that kind of quality win. You mentioned the 5-setter. To that end, though, they did need to wipe the floor with Virginia Tech, Akshay. I will absolutely concur with you on that. And they did. So good work. Gents, I got a take, and I have some stats to back this up.
Okay.
I'm a little concerned about the jump serve, the Bianca Bertolino jump serve. My friendly stats that I have pulled together is that on the year, it has resulted in 44 service errors out of Tech's 111. That is 36% of our service errors alone. At the clip that you would expect the average Georgia Tech hitter to hit into a service error, that would be about 18%. That is about 111 out of 1106-ish. And that trend continued against Virginia and Virginia Tech. These are games played in our own building against, granted it's, a set defense and stuff, but I'm to the point where I feel like it's pulling us out of service, and I get a little bit angsty when I see that they're not pulling us out of service, but certainly out of maybe that main rotation. So I know we haven't really broached that yet. I know that it's a cool thing to have, so I figure we might as well talk about it because it seems like it's a little off compared to last year.
Maybe yes. Here's what's fascinating to me is our friend Chad Gordon, who's put up some really good leaderboards in terms of volleyball, advanced analytics, and stuff like that. His most recent top serving team, so full teams across the board, so far. He has us 10th by EPA
I
in the
believe it.
nation,
Yeah.
second best of the ACC. But the last time a Tech person appeared on the individuals leaderboard, it was Otene. It was not Bertolino. To kind of go to
Yeah.
your point there, Emiliano's got a decent service. Velas is pretty good as well, but we are really good on points. Like we're good when we are serving. We're generally good. But yeah, I didn't get to watch Bertolino's serves since I was listening on the radio, but it
Yeah.
didn't sound like at the end of the match she was doing the jump serve, especially because she was serving on match point as well.
Yeah.
And it sounded like she just kind of threw one in the middle just to get it over and things like that.
Mhm.
But like we are in the ballpark serving wise with all the other heavy hitters in the country in this regard, which is nice and has kept us in some games as well. And Suarez was a factor in that too, and not having her doesn't help.
Let
Um,
me
but
color in the lines a little bit
sure.
as well with stats from Evolve on Bertolino's serves. 211 total serves, and I think this includes today's game.
It does.
13% ace
Or no,
rate.
it does not. It includes Friday night
Right.
because she
Okay.
had 13 today.
Okay, great. So this is before today's games. 13% ace rate. What is the other number that I wanted to pick out? It's a 31% first ball kill rate. But if you look at the service error rate, it's 22%, and the ball in play rate is 65%. And the ball in play rate is in bolded red, meaning that is a very, very low percentile rating.
Oh,
For comparison, Velez's ball in play rate is 91% and Emiliano's is 92. Those are top. Those are bolded in green. So very, very high percentiles. I would tell you the percentiles, but I have no way on this page to swap between them for serves.
Yeah,
So
I'd flag that all of those players wind up in that same. There's 5 players that Georgia Tech has that have taken 170 or more serves. So a critical mass. If you're hearing the names Emiliano, Otene, Bertolino, Velez, and Mogridge, those are going to be your big 5 right there. So I'd say those are more apples to apples. You're not getting thrown off by small sample size of Laura Fisher's 11 serves, but only one service error type of rate. So.
yeah, and to add to that too, it's not just that the jump service is creating service errors. It's also that when she does the jump serve, Tech is winning 44% of its points, which is
which is
a
significantly
shock.
worse than our average.
It's a middling amount
Yeah.
Yes.
compared to other or the other heavy hitters here, right? Velez is at 50%. Emiliano's at 53%. So yes, like the margins there are 6 to 10%, but also 6% of 211 serves is 13. It's a pretty sizable amount. And
Yeah.
it's weird, like narratively and maybe vibesily. It's weird that Jake is bringing stats and I'm bringing the vibes on this one. It also happens that like the service errors happen at the worst possible time, every
They're
single
not.
time.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
are
Huh.
very
Yeah,
poorly
that's about the
timed.
vibesiest of a take as you can have right
Just
there.
like
Go for it.
consistently the worst possible time when Tech needs to not momentum fake, but like when they need to get back in a game, they need to get back in a set. And I'm thinking of a specific point in that UCLA game where Tech was down by 6, and if they went on a run, this game was still kind of in hand, and they had picked up a couple points, and they're starting to cut back into that 6 point lead, and they're at like 3, and she's on serve, and she picks the ball up and then puts it right into the net, and the air in the building completely gone, and UCLA goes on to win that set and then pick off the Tech in 5. And obviously that's the first game of the season. You can't take it too much away, but it's I think I am with you, Jake, in that it is a little aggravating. And we've talked about it before too. We've been like, should she keep doing it? Should she not? But I think the numbers here are showing pretty
And
substantially that
the
she should
worry,
not.
the worrying part is that it just clearly just the serve did improve year over year.
Yep.
That's I think like after last year, 2 years ago to last year was just like a whole new player from what
Well,
we
I would
saw.
argue it's gotten significantly worse, and maybe
It
it's variance, right? Like this is a high risk, high reward kind of play.
it is, and that's why they're generally okay with it. And like we saw the high reward part of it against Louisville last year when she won us set 1 single handedly. Um, But then yeah, it can look like the other way around. And also it's just weird to see it when another jump server comes in and it's just like, well, especially like Olivia Babcock, who's best player in volleyball right now, but just there's other players in the ACC that will do this serve and they're hitting it and with a much better rate than she is right now. So, and you can kind of tell when the ball's in the air if she's going to hit it too. Like the toss does a lot to tell you if it's going to go down or not for those that watch.
Let me contextualize what I said about it being variance with the 2023 numbers. 502 total serves, 12% ace rate, 16% service error rate, which is still not good, by the way. 71% ball and play rate, still not good. 27% first ball kill, 49, 50% serve success. So serve success in that Tech won a point on her serve. I mean,
we were winning more often last year on the serve, basically.
yeah, that serve success rate, that 50% is a 93rd percentile. First ball kill is 93rd percentile, but the service error and ball and play rates are both three or like lower than 5%. And just to add the percentiles here, now that I can see them as well for this year, both are 2%, the second percentile in service error rate and ball and play rate. If you want to stretch this back to 22 and 21, where she wasn't doing the jump serve, 96 percentile service error rate. It was only 3%, and 90% ball and play rate, which was 87th percentile in 22. And then in 21, 77th percentile in service error rate and 78th percentile in ball and play rate. So the jump serve is like very clearly a net negative.
So far, yep.
But to be fair, I guess the ace rate is 99th percentile. Like she's actually producing a lot of aces.
That's the thing.
If it lands, it lands well. So like, yes, it is improved. I mean, it's improved a percent and it's improved a percentile from last year, but there's way more failures in this than there are successes. I don't know if we have any more on telling someone or an elite athlete to not do something that they do.
I think we've talked about as much as anyone has about someone's single part of their game as anyone on a college sports podcast this week. So, hey, I'm just glad we got Clemson this week. More, they got teams that play them this week beat them pretty badly. So, I think they may have gotten to one set win or won a set today against whoever they were playing in Jersey. But nonetheless, this is the travel partner home and home week for the Jackets.
And Tech needs to rake up some wins because Clemson, not the greatest strength of schedule, but and this is where I introduce, for those who are newer to the podcast, I try and back out tournament predictions for volleyball, softball, and baseball because I don't really find a lot of good ones out there. So for volleyball, I do currently have Tech in the field based on their current stats. And yes, some component of that is just win, baby. And so these results from this weekend, once we can get those in the mix and hopefully some good results against Clemson would really put Tech at what would that make it? 14-4 on the year. That looks a lot nicer than 10-4. This is the section of the ACC slate where you got to stack some wins. So continue to stack wins, and I'm feeling good about being a nice little 2 seed in the tournament type of deal. But there's a lot of winnable, or if they win, a lot of great pelts to grab too if they want to make the jump back up. So that's what I got on that, gents.
Sounds good to me. Shall we go around the rest of the flats and talk about what's new let's start with men's and women's basketball.
Yeah, it's just that they were at the ACC tip-off this week. It's, if you're interested in that, interviews, classic puff pieces, a couple beginning of seasons interviews with the local media too on the YouTube channel. That's coming up here in what, like 4 weeks ish.
Jesus, that season's in 3 weeks. Oh dear God.
Yeah.
I gotta think about basketball now. All right.
Softball, it was off this week. They will play Jacksonville State in a fall ball friendly on Friday, a 10 innings fixture. Again, it's at 5. I think it's at home. I don't really think that there's going to be any sort of coverage that comes from Rec, but if you're in town, maybe something to go check out. Flipping over to cross country real quick. They will also be in action on Friday at 10 a.m. in College Station for their last regular season competition. That is at the Arturo Barrios Invitational. And then number 17, golf. They will be at the Golf Club of Georgia Collegiate Invitational in Alpharetta. That's Friday through Sunday. Anything else that I have missed, Mr. Grant?
Yeah, we need to talk swimming, and that is because
Ooh.
I made a big whole song and dance last week about how they had only ever beaten Florida State 3 times in 44 attempts. Well, make that four. Boom. I
Yay!
said
Four
that
and
this was gonna
45.
be I said that this was gonna be a bellwether for this year, and it was going to tell me a lot about this team because that's generally how I use this meet. In the past, it has been close. Close tech losses the last couple of years. They won 174 and a half to 125 and a half. That is a
Wow.
pretty healthy margin when Florida State came into this meet ranked 19th.
Dang.
Um, I don't know enough about Florida State to know if they had injuries or they weren't swimming main relays, but you don't do that against ACC, competition, at least in my book. So
Yeah.
I'll take this at face value. I would note that they didn't win either relay. Not great, but I think they were both sprint relays. I have them both written down as freestyle, but one of them should be a medley. Either
Yeah.
way, not going to write too much into that. But if you want to know where the gents cleaned up. The fact that they went 1, 2, 3 in the 1,000 and 1, 2, 3, 4 in the 500 warms my distance swimmer
Woo.
heart so much. Mert Kilavus, of course, at the top of the list for both of those. Really, really strong showing. They walked home with or came home with a number of second place, third place finishes in other events. So I really only called it out when they got first, second, third type of deal. But Berke Saka came back number one in 3 events. That's the 100, 200 back, and the 200 IM. Max Fowler won both the 1 meter and the 3 meter diving. Love to see that. And between Joao Caballero, Antonio Romero, Leandro Odorici, good showings there on the rest of it. And really, the women they did lose. It was about a 24 point margin, so
Yep.
pretty.
Yep.
Pretty, it was more than just one race, if that makes sense. But they did win the two free relay to close it out. That's great to see. Florida State is typically a pretty deep team, and it is hard to win sprint freestyle relays. Tech typically has not had the distance, or not the distance, the depth to do that against ACC competition. So really, really good to see that and pulling out a win there. Of note, 500 and the 1,000 was really, or 500 and the 200. Sorry, we're really strong for the women as well. Zara Masood, Sophie Murphy, in one form or another went first and second. It was vice versa in the 200 free and the 500. So they each won one there. Sophie Murphy also won the 100 free. Phoebe Wright won the 200 back and also placed in the 200 free. So yeah, really a good showing in Tallahassee. I'm very interested to see how the November coaches poll looks because
Yeah.
especially on the men's side, they certainly took care of business against Florida State. That is delightful to see. So for a team that had received one vote in the October poll, very interested to see how this starts to stack up as they get into the meat of their season. So
This helps remind me to keep Berge Saka more on my radar than usual because he's been our guy at national
mhm.
championships. If we do send an individual, it's him usually.
Yep,
And the last couple of years have not been kind to our individual swimmers when they have made
yeah.
national championships. So if this is a turn the corner kind of year, it'd be really cool. Also, our women's 200 free relay, just an all last name team. Hadja Loizu, Stanislavjevic, Pape, and Ferrari. Just just a lovely
I
variety here.
I love the mentality of putting somebody with the last name Ferrari in the anchor spot to close
Yes,
the entire
so good,
meet.
so good.
That's a
Yes,
flex. Good work there.
good
Do you
So
think
stuff.
she's done that forever? Like it's like nominative determinism. Like she
This is
always swims the anchor
this
leg.
is Jillian Ferrari we're talking about, which yeah, they better like that. How who
That's
else do you
pretty
put there?
good.
Who else do you put there?
I don't
Anyways,
know. But that's a really good performance from the men and a good developmental performance from the women as well. So looking forward to more from those two programs. Mr. Grant, lead us out with some trivia.
quick trivia. Last week, coming into the UNC game, Georgia Tech was 4-2 for the first time since 2017 in football. Right now, Georgia Tech is 5-2 for the first time since which football season?
2014.
That is correct. They came out of their seventh game of the year at Keenan Memorial Stadium, 5-2. That was granted with a loss, but yes, for the first time in 10 years, Georgia Tech football is 5-2. Editorializing just a little bit. The amount of angst I have about being 5-2 when I think we should be 6-1 or something like that is something that has been very healthy to keep in mind. So if any of you out there are salty about Syracuse or Louisville, just know that we're in this together, and 5-2 is still a great spot to be in. It's not something we've seen from this team in quite some time. So trying to take the spoonful of sugar there.
I forgot my point I've made to like 18 people in person that I didn't do on here. If being 5-2 feels like it gives us the wiggle room to withstand some coastal chaos that has now spread to the rest of the ACC and it not destroy our season. That was like my main takeaway after the game was like, oh my God, we have a little bit more buffer space now in these next few games where stuff is going to get weird. Things will get weird no matter what, knowing who we play.
Yep.
But that's my last football point. I just forgot to. That seemed like pertinent point.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. Mr. Grant, where can the people find us on the internet?
Yeah, as always, you can find us at fromtherumbleseat.com. Email us with your thoughts and suggestions at fromtherumbleseat@gmail.com. You can find us at FTRS blog on Twitter. I'm at jgrant98. Jack's at Jack Nicholas. You can find Section 103 there as well at Section 103, section103.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at From the Rumble Seat. You can find this podcast wherever fine podcasts are distributed. Good night, good luck, and go Jackets.